Today, I think it'd be valuable to discuss something very difficult to talk about as a musician, and that is nerves. We get nervous. Um, why do we feel nervous? We're insecure, we feel at risk, we would rather be anywhere else. If any of you have ever played recitals, you feel tension. I remember as a child being really nervous all day. Some of my friends told me that they'd even throw up. They'd be so nervous about playing. So we're insecure and we feel at risk. And the next question would be, is it a person, place, or thing that generates this nervous feeling within us? As it could be not just as musicians, it can be in any situation, but let's just say as a musician, maybe you're playing in an orchestra and a certain conductor makes you nervous, the way he or she gives the beats. Maybe it's a certain piece of music triggers some emotional feeling inside you that makes you nervous. Maybe even a concert hall that you play in could make you nervous. It certainly has something to do with emotional stress. And I'll share an example of what happened to me today, this very day. Earlier in the day, I had to go and renew my driver's license in California. So I drove quite a little distance, about 20 miles, to the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles. And I went there particularly, there was one closer to home, but I've been there before, and I really don't like that place. It's very dark and stuffy and feel very uncomfortable there. And the one down in Petaluma is where I went to, has more natural light. Well, I was surprised when I walked in this morning because the natural light didn't seem very bright at all. And, I always worry about having vision tests because I'm sort of nearsighted. And the vision tests that we do in California are they're mounted maybe, 8 to 10 feet away from me. And they're very, very small font. So even if I'm wearing driving glasses, it's very hard to see those. So at any rate, I was a little nervous about that. And we have to take a test, an examination. And so I went up to the counter, and first thing I was asked, we have this thing in California called Real ID. And Real ID shows, you have to prove that, you're a resident, and you have to have, appropriate mail that's been sent to your residence, and you have to have a passport or birth certificate, and you have to have social security number. And so the first thing I did, she asked for the mail for the residents, and I brought out some stuff that I've been gathering, advertisements, anything that showed my name and address. She says, well, we can't accept that. I'm like, why? She says, oh, that's just advertising. That doesn't mean anything. I said, I got about 10 different things. Doesn't matter. That's no good. And so I'm like, well, what am I going to do? She says, do you have a registration? Did you drive down here? You have registration in your car? So I said, yes. So I was able to go out and get the registration from the car and proof of insurance. So I showed those to her. She says, okay, that'll do. So I couldn't find my social security card, but she says, the number, fine, that'll do. And I had my passport. So that was okay. But of course, So I was feeling a little stressed out by that. Then I had to take the eye test, and I was happy I was able to pass that. That was a really, real, great feeling. And then I went over to take the test. It's on a computer, and the computer says, you got 2 shots. If you fail the first test and fail the second test, then you're going to have to start the whole process over again. You'll have to pay a new fee, and nothing that you've done so far will count. Putting pressure on. I said, okay, well, fine. So I start the test. And they make it even worse because every time you put an answer in, they tell you whether you got it right or you got it wrong right away, right that instant. So I put in, and they're very vaguely worded questions. So the first one I put in, I got wrong. I'm like, ugh. And then the second one I put in, I got wrong. Oh my God, there's going to be like 30 or 40. I don't know how many questions. I didn't count them, but there was a whole, and I think you can miss like 4. And here I've done 2 and I've already missed 2. And so I just take a deep breath and I'm going, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I just said to myself, be strong, stay calm, just don't get excited, And and there were very many vaguely worded questions, but apparently I made the right guesses. Things like I had been studying all week. Online they have tests that you can take trial tests. And one of the questions came up was actually one that I had read. It said, how far should you be from the airbags? Or, what's the appropriate distance, whatever they said it was. I forget whatever reason. And the answer was 10 inches. And I think the possibilities were like 6 inches, 10 inches, and 15 inches. So a question like that. And there are a bunch of questions like that didn't really have anything to do with driving. But anyhow, I knew the answer to that one, 10 inches. So I was happy to put that one in. So you see, that's where you talk about getting nerves. If I had to be in that situation at the DMV office, which is a place that I feel tense when I walk in there, it's a difficult situation. And if I had to do it on a repetitive basis, maybe, I don't know, maybe, I'd get some sort of, immediate feeling of nerves if I ever got close to the building. And certainly, it's not, if we're talking about feeling nervous around the person, we all have bosses, and if we get along great with the bosses, fantastic, and if we don't, well, then there's going to be problems, right? And what else? A concert hall, sure. Maybe a piece of music. Now this is an interesting one, because I had some certain issues with pieces that, for whatever reason, I would just get a little tense playing it. But other musicians in the orchestra, for example, the principal trombone has a very, very difficult solo in the Ravel piece, the Bolero. And I was speaking with, the Bolero was scheduled. We always have the schedule of our concerts a year ahead of time. And I was speaking to the principal trombonist, and he said, oh my God, we're going to play the Bolero. And he says, it's going to ruin my whole year. I'm going to be worrying about that piece. He says, and I said, well, you're going to practice it? He says, of course I'm going to practice it. But he says, there are just things that happen. I've played it before, and I just feel so nervous about playing that piece. So here's a man who's going to have his whole life, changed for a year because he's got this piece of music. Another situation is the principal bass has a prominent solo in Mahler's First Symphony. Just da da dee da da dee dee da 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 dee, and he's that the principal bass plays that alone to start, after the little short introductory rhythm in that symphony. And so I was speaking with the bass player, and he was saying, oh my God, we're playing that Mahler symphony. Oh, I'm scared to death already, And I said, well, you've played it before. He says, yeah, we had played on auditions and whatever, but I've played it before, and I get so nervous when I play it. So obviously, these are musician issues, but if we talk in the bigger picture, can nerves manifest from emotional stress alone? Could nerves be a reaction to physical weakness or illness? I think that's certainly a possibility, So That's, those are the various considerations we can have. So so what could we do? What could we do to alleviate these symptoms, make them better? Maybe we can't get rid. Maybe we're high-strung people, and just we react to stress with nervous stuff. It's like with me. I don't consider myself very high-strung, but down there at DMV, I had to self-talk myself. Okay, we're in the situation. We have to get through it. Let's do it the best we can. But when it was over and I was successful, I passed the test, and I walked out of DMV, I really felt exhausted from the strain of it. And I confess, also another thing I confess, I have a keto diet and I do intermittent fasting. So I hadn't eaten this morning. I don't eat until, sometime in the afternoon. And I have certain blood sugar issues, and maybe the stress affected my blood sugar, pushed my blood sugar down. So I felt better, because I feel better now. I've eaten something. So let's assume, though, that there might be some other things. For example, maybe you don't have a good diet, and that's leaving you more susceptible. So the thing to do there would be to upgrade your diet. Maybe you don't sleep well. Maybe you don't, pay attention to your sleep patterns, so that, you don't have good circadian rhythms. So see if you can improve your sleep patterns. What about exercise? If you don't have regular exercise, maybe you need to establish some regular exercise to improve all your physical outcomes, your oxygen intake. I think walking every day is such a valuable thing to do. Maybe it's running, maybe it's weightlifting, going to a gym, something, taking time to help your body to function better. How about dental health? Maybe you've got some gum disease or tooth decay, which is putting infection into your body and running your system down. So those kind of things are good to, let's clean it up, right? Just clean up your basic health, and then maybe the nerves won't be a problem, or if you're high strung, maybe you have better control. Another thing we can do as a musician, let's speak as a musician, that we can look at the basic techniques we use on our instruments. I've had many examples of going through my long career of having nerves interfere with my performance. I remember the first audition I ever played for San Francisco Symphony. It's the first audition I had for a real significant job. We had to play the opening, of all things I've been recording recently, the Mozart Fifth Violin Concerto. And the opening has an adagio, starts very soft. Well, when I was there, I had to play that for my audition. Back in those days, they asked for the Mozart Fifth. And, I had to get the bow on the string somehow for this very soft adagio. And my hand was shaking. And again, I just had to be strong. I just dropped the bow on the string. I go, oh, whatever, I don't know. Just get going. Thank God, I had practiced so much for the audition. I hadn't practiced that. I didn't realize that was going to be so difficult. Everything else I'd practiced, and I did very well. I was lucky. God smiled on me. I did win that audition and got that first job. But, that can happen. I had another situation. I remember I've talked about this, that I fell in love to play violin. I wanted to play the Beethoven Violin Concerto more than anything. Well, in college, I finally was ready to play the Beethoven Violin Concerto. But for some reason, I was working with, actually 2 different instructors at that time. And I started getting this sweating problem in my left hand. And I couldn't, that opening of the Beethoven with octaves, I was slipping and sliding around. And the more I worked and tried to figure it out, the worse it got. So I've gotten over those problems. I don't have those problems with my bow arm and the sweating in my hand. How? Because I went back to basics and I just learned, my philosophy is command the string, put the bow on the string, don't be afraid. Yasha Heifetz used to say, don't be afraid, it only hurts once, take a chance, right? So put the bow on the string, don't be afraid. And with my left hand, I did scales and arpeggios, literally month after month. Every day I would warm up, focusing on having control in my left hand. So I don't know what the techniques might be for a wind player who's nervous or a pianist. Oh, my God, I remember a time I was part of the Aspen Music Festival, and a very fine pianist was playing. I forget what. I think what. I don't remember. Like a Chopin concerto, and he came out on stage. I could tell he was nervous, and he sat down for the first rehearsal, and he turned to the orchestra and he apologized. He says, "I am so sorry. I don't know what's going on. I can't seem to remember this music. I can't." And yet, he had a job to do. So he actually played the concert with the music, and he still had problems playing the piece through. He was so upset, so stressed. I mean, this guy, is a great player, but the nerves had just gotten to him. So, like I say, I don't know. I know how I deal with nerves on violin, but I don't know how to deal with nerves on other instruments, except to suggest that, make yourself as strong and healthy as you can be, and then investigate what you think might be causing the nervous, reactions in your bodies. And so, as another self, shall we say, apology to you, that I get very nervous speaking in this kind of situation, that I'm very comfortable now playing violin for large audiences, small audiences, playing by memory. I used to have problems playing by memory. I'd get nervous and I couldn't remember the music. But now my biggest problem is speaking, speaking to you. So, I'm nervous. I'm nervous speaking to you. I'm nervous every time I speak on these videos. But I just feel like it's something I need to do. And the more I do it, the better I'll get. And hopefully speak with some cogency. So thanks very much for listening. And if you have any comments, I'm happy to read them. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care. We'll see you on the next one.